Welcome to the June edition of What's in Bloom at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. Each month we put together a selection of plants that are in bloom at that particular month, and we're walking you through those for the month of June. So first up, right towering above me, is Yucca Rostrata. This beautiful tall growing yucca comes from West Texas and northern Mexico, and it's just been in bloom for about a week now. And these spectacular spires of white flowers. This is a very slow growing plant, so to get a plant as big as the one behind me takes a long time. Yucca Rostrata. Next up we have this tree, Brachychiton discolor x acerifolius. So this is a hybrid of two species from Australia. The genus Brachychiton used to be part of the family Sterculiaceae, but that whole family has been moved into the Malvaceae, or the hibiscus family. This tree tends to lose leaves when it comes into flower, so now it's just dumped a whole bunch of leaves and the flowering is beginning with these pink flowers. So there are many, many buds on the tree, and it's going to be a spectacular show for the next couple of months. Brachychiton acerifolius x discolor, or discolor x acerifolius, I should say. Plants in the genus Eriogonum are known as buckwheats. And California has more of them than anywhere else. And a good example is this one, Eriogonum fasciculatum. It comes from California and southward into Baja California. And there are many, many teeny tiny flowers and clusters that just cover the plant in the blooming season. Very attractive to bees, which are busy visiting the flowers right now. Eriogonum fasciculatum. This little plant is Zinnia grandiflora. Grandiflora meaning big flower, and although the flower really isn't big in absolute terms, it is for the size of the plant. This is a plant that grows in the Great Plains of the western United States and southward into Mexico, and it kind of dies back in the wintertime and then comes back and makes a display like this all summer long, every summer. So really spectacular burst of bright yellow in the garden. Zinnia grandiflora. Next up is Hesperoyucca whipplei. This is a California native plant, also occurs in northern Baja California, and it used to be classified as Yucca whipplei, but now it's moved into its own genus Hesperoyucca. It does differ from the other yuccas in that the inflorescence is terminal. In other words, the central part of the plant extends up to become the flower stalk, and the plant will die afterwards if it doesn't have offsets. So this one does not have offsets, so this is its swan song. And it occurs from central California all the way down to the Baja border and southward. It's really a spectacular display of white flowers, pollinated by moths, so it's pollinated at nighttime. And these beautiful stiff rosettes of silvery leaves. Some populations are really more greenish, but we really favor these silvery ones like the one here. Hesperoyucca whipplei, our Lord's candle. Here we have a plant in the Protea family from Australia. This is Banksia ashbyi. So Banksia is a large genus occurring throughout Australia, and they oftentimes have wonderful leaves, look like they were made by a dressmaker with a pair of pinking shears, and then these wonderful clusters of flowers. So this is not a flower, that is a cluster of many, many flowers in a head. And each one has a long curving style that sticks out that gives it this fuzzy look, and they're quite long lasting, actually very popular as cut flowers. This one's Banksia ashbyi. Here we have an agave. A lot of the agaves are century plants, bloom in the summertime, and this one is actually a well-known species, Agave tequilana. So Tequila is a town near Guadalajara in the state of Jalisco in Mexico, and where the cultivation of this plant began. And of course it's the source of the beverage tequila, and very widely grown to produce tequila, but not so often seen in gardens, and its spectacular inflorescence is really quite something. The flowers are greener than those of other agaves, but very tall and very wonderful to see in bloom. Agave tequilana. Here we have another agave, Agave ovatifolia. It comes from northeastern Mexico, and it's a relatively recently described agave. Only since 2000 has this agave had a name. You would wonder how a plant this striking would have gone so long getting without a name, and that's because it comes from a remote mountaintop in Mexico where no road goes by, so you wouldn't easily happen upon it. Agave ovatifolia, the name means ovate or egg-shaped leaf, and the leaves are rounder than those of most agaves. And the flower stalk is not quite in bloom yet, but it is at the bud stage with kind of red tinged buds with open to yellow flowers very shortly. Agave ovatifolia. This plant is Xanthorrhoea preissii. So Xanthorrhoea is a genus from Australia known as Australian grass trees. They do have a grass-like foliage, wonderful for the garden because of the way that the leaves move and dance when the wind stirs. And they have these very dramatic flower stalks. So this is the stalk that's in flower now with these white or off-white flowers. And then to its right is last year's stalk that is now blackened but still makes a wonderful statement. Xanthorrhoea preissii. This plant is Alyogyne Hockeyafolia. It comes from southern Australia and it's in the hibiscus family. The flowers really look very hibiscus-like. They're more cupped when they aren't fully open, as you see here, and then when they do open widely, there's a little bit of red at the center. Really very beautiful. The species comes in both a lavender form and a yellow form, and this obviously is the yellow form. Aleogeny Hockeyafolia. In the family Caprifoliaceae, we have this wonderful little Mediterranean shrub, Scabiosa OkraLuca. It has heads of white flowers in a tight cluster and very finely dissected foliage, so it makes a nice soft texture in the garden. Just beginning to flower now, many, many flowers to come, Scabiosa OkraLuca. This plant is Dicea brevifolia. So Dicea is a genus in the bromeliad family, and they mostly come from southern Brazil and southward into Uruguay and Argentina. And the flowers are always on the yellow to orange range, this one obviously being on the yellow side, and with very small heads, a very compact plant, one of the terrestrial bromeliads. That means bromeliads that grow in the ground rather than perched on a tree like some of the others. Dicea brevifolia. Yucca is a wonderful genus of plants. Used to be in the agave family, but now they put that into the asparagus family. They occur in the United States and in Mexico, and a lot of them are just a clump of leaves right on the ground without a trunk, but some of them really get quite large, and this is an example of one of those large ones from Mexico, Yucca folifera. I saw one in Michoacan so large there was a door in it and you could walk through to the other side. So that shows you how big they can get eventually, but that would be a long time to get that big. Ours at 50 years is nowhere near big enough to go through, but it's a very impressive plant with these wonderful pendulous clusters of flowers. So most yuccas, the flowers go up, these ones they hang down. Yucca folifera. This is a good month for yuccas, and here we have another one. This one is Yucca thompsoniana from West Texas and northern Mexico. Its closest relative is Yucca Rostrata, the one we started off with, but it has smaller heads of leaves. The leaves aren't as blue, they're not as flexible, and the flower stalk is narrower and it comes a little bit later usually. But Yucca thompsoniana is a fantastic species. When you have a many-headed clump like this with all these flower spires going up, it really makes quite a show. Yucca thompsoniana. This is a wonderful agave from Sonora in northwestern Mexico, Agave colorata. A lot of agaves, the flower stalk goes straight up, but colorata tends to wander to the side, as you can see here. What's really wonderful about it is these beautiful red buds and then the yellow of the anthers when they come out, making this wonderful multicolored display. Agave colorata is not a large agave and doesn't make very many offsets, but it really does quite well for us here at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. Agave colorata. Of all the groups in the cactus family, the one with the biggest distribution is Opuntia, the prickly pears. These occur from Argentina in the south all the way to Canada in the north, so that's a much larger area than any other genus in the family. And this particular one is Opuntia gomii, the cultivar Old Mexico from South Texas and northeastern Mexico. And it's really quite unique in the way that the edges of the pads are scalloped. So it's not just a round or oval, but a wonderfully scalloped edge. It has slightly greenish yellow flowers here in the spring and then reddish fruits later on in the fall. Opuntia gomii, Old Mexico. This beautiful tree is Parkinsonia Desert Museum. It's one of the Palo Verdes. Palo Verde means green stick in Spanish because of the beautiful green branches and trunk. So it looks very much like one of its parents, Parkinsonia aculeata, but it has been bred to be spineless, and so it's much more user-friendly than Parkinsonia aculeata is. These wonderful yellow flowers in masses in the summertime and much visited by bees. Parkinsonia Desert Museum. One of the modest size agaves is Agave Midas. The old name for it is Agave Celcii. It's a widely grown plant, and it has the habit of making a multiplicity of heads, so it makes a big clump over time. And one of the nice things about that is it means that we get multiple flower stalks every year. So these flower stalks with the purple tinged flowers are not so tall so that you can see them right close up, and there are many of them. It's a wonderful display for us every year, Agave Midas. In my time at the Ruth Bancroft Garden, I've made quite a few aloe hybrids, and this is a wonderful little one named Aloe GW Miller. Its parents are Aloe Zub from Sudan and Aloe squarosa from the island of Socotra in the Indian Ocean. So it's two seldom seen aloes that combine to make this. Because its parents are so tropical in origin, it's not very cold tolerant. So we have it here where it's covered in the wintertime. And it just flowers and flowers. It's been in continuous flower now for 3 months and showing no sign of stopping yet. Aloe GW Miller. Here we have a wonderful California native poppy, the Matilija Poppy or Rhamnia coulteri. Also known as the fried egg bush, and I think if you see these flowers you can see why it suggests a fried egg. Really a spectacular flower and a plant that is easy to kill if you disturb the roots when you're planting it, but once it gets going it practically is ineradicable and tends to come up where you don't necessarily want it. So you got to leave room for this plant. But what a wonderful flower, Rhamnia coulteri. This bush is Phymatospermum Acerosum, long known to us as Athanasia acerosa, and that's the name we're more familiar with, probably what you would see it as in a nursery. It's a South African bush, and we really like its texture. It's got these wonderful blue-green, fine textured leaves and these flat heads of flowers. They start out chartreuse in the beginning, and then they turn more golden as they come into bloom, and really beautiful at all stages. Phymatospermum Acerosum. And that brings us to the close of our June edition of What's in Bloom at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. But remember, there are many plants in the garden that do not last a whole month, maybe only a few days, like some of the cacti. And so there's always something special to see that isn't on our What's in Bloom list. So come visit the garden when you have a chance, and come see all the wonderful plants that are here all year long.